Okay, we are back and we're ready to go on to item 14. And we've got our audio-visual going. And I'm so honored to have so many qualified experts here to talk with us today about affordable housing and the welfare tax exemption. I know that each of us up here on this dais could tell stories about our own districts and about the impact of the lack of affordable housing in California. The preservation of housing that is already affordable and the creation of new affordable housing is just among the most important things that we can be doing. In my own home county, there is a lack of hospital workers. There is a lack of teachers, a lack of people to stock grocery stores, just a lack of essential workers across the board. And many people who were born and raised in the district who are no longer able to stay there because of the cost and because of the lack of affordable options. So this is tremendously important to me today, as it is to others who are here. And I wanted to recognize the special role that has been played by our controller, Malia Cohen. She has been very central to legislation in this area. And Mr. Emron will be adding to that, but suffice to say, there are many of us who have been working for a number of years in this area. And so now at the juncture that we're at, we are committed to seeing the problem through in any way possible for as long as it takes. And I really, during the lunch hour, I was sitting here reading through some of the materials, the letters that I received on the topic, and I felt the hot lava rising higher and higher in me. It is just something that has a stranglehold on our state right now, and we have to break through that stranglehold. And we each have a piece of the pie in doing that. So that's going to be what we are going to be very, very, very focused on, and asking the hard questions. Today, as we hear the testimony, I want to hear what the BOE can do, but I want to hear what any other state agency can do and what other community partners can do, because we're not going to stop at the fence around the BOE's jurisdiction. We have to, as Californians, keep going until we smash through any and all barriers to achieving affordable housing for the people in our communities. So I know that Mr. Emron is someone who's had a front seat, would like to comment on the controller's really significant involvement in this issue.
Thank you so much, Chair Lieber, and want to welcome all the guests, especially our CAA President, Christine DePaul. What an honor it is to see some folks also on the screen today. So we're going to dive into this, and it's going to be a great hearing. I just wanted to address really quickly, in order to provide further funding to stack capacity to address our housing shortfall, the controller sponsored AB 2353 with Assemblymember Ward to solve some of the issues being raised today. She's committed to working with the assessors, developers, the Board of Equalization, and other stakeholders to determine the best solution to address what appears to be unintended consequences. At this time, it's unclear whether we need legislative cleanup, an LTA, or an alternative solution. She looks really forward to convening the stakeholders and determining next steps. And this is a bill that was birthed from her time holding property tax abatements when she was chair of the Board of Equalization several years ago. So once again, Chair Lieber, I look forward to the discussions today and working with you and all the board members and making sure that every Californian has a place to call home at night. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Emron, and please convey our thanks to the controller. She was not able to be here today in person. But I know the real force majeure that she brought to getting Mr. Ward's bill through and to bringing significant community partners, in particular in the Bay Area, but really statewide, to support for that bill. And really, we will see it implemented. And so that's what we're aiming at today. Mr. Vice Chair, did you wish to make any brief comments?
Yeah, thank you for organizing this and putting it together. I look forward to hearing how we can come up with housing solutions for Californians. And this is a difficult state to live in, to afford even an apartment. And anything that we could do to expand opportunities for home ownership in whatever form that is, I'm in support of, because I just believe that, you know, we all, at least I think most people have a vision of being able to have ownership, and it serves as a means of developing equity, which provides an opportunity for retirement, often for folks. So if you took your Social Security and equity within a home, that's often enough to live a comfortable life. So I want to try to do whatever I can to help enhance that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vasquez?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for putting this together and bringing it back to us. We've had so many hearings these last 4 years around housing, and this is another piece of it, I think, as we're talking about, especially the welfare exemption. And I'm glad to hear in your opening remarks, you mentioned that, you know, even though we're pushing up against our boundaries in terms of authority, I think whatever we could do to support and chime in, especially with, you know, the assessors and the nonprofit world, folks that are involved in the housing front. And as we see, you know, these disasters, they keep coming up every year, whether it's a fire or an earthquake or flooding that's going on throughout the state of California. I think we need to make sure that we're doing our part, hopefully to provide some assistance and hopefully some good tax incentives and for those that are looking not only to rebuild, but like our vice chair mentioned, you know, for the next generation. You know, I'm looking at my kids, and I know everybody that has kids here, it's difficult. You know, that American dream is unreachable. It's unaffordable for a lot of our folks in California now.
Thank you. Mr. Schaefer?
Yes, I want to thank you, Madam Chair, for bringing this on. This is referred to as a continued hearing in the letter that is in our material. Is this a part two, or is this the initial hearing?
This is an informational hearing, and this is part one of it, but I think that in the letter from one of our witnesses today, it was a letter addressed to me, and he was referring to a previous meeting that I and my staff had with him. So this is not the first time that we've seen the organization, but it's the first hearing.
We have 11 witnesses, but I only see 8 out here. Have we lost 3, or are they?
Well, we've got folks on the team environment.
Oh, I see. Yes.
So we're going to give you a full palette.
And they're able to allocate their time, so
Oh, yes.
be most effective. I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So members, without any further ado, we are very pleased to have the president of the California Assessors Association with us today. And we'd like to go to her first. This is Assessor Kristen DePaul, who is president of the California Assessors Association and is also Modoc County Assessor. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board, and distinguished guests. As mentioned, my name is Kristen DePaul, and I am the Modoc County Assessor and Recorder, and I have the honor of serving as the president of the California Assessors Association this year. On behalf of California's 58 county assessors, thank you for the opportunity to participate in this important discussion. We appreciate the board's interest in how the welfare exemption process can better support the development and preservation of affordable housing while continuing to ensure the exemption is administered consistently and in accordance with California law. We share the goal of making this process as efficient, predictable, and transparent as possible. Affordable housing is an important public policy objective, and the county assessors recognize that delays in the exemption process can create real challenges for nonprofit housing providers and their financing partners. Our role as assessors is to administer the Revenue and Taxation Code, as well as new laws enacted by the legislature or interpreted by the courts. We do so independently, consistently, and with a commitment to fairness for all taxpayers. The welfare exemption is unlike most other property tax exemptions. It is co-administered by the Board of Equalization and county assessors, and it relies on coordination among many participants, including applicants, lenders, local permitting agencies, tax collectors, and other county departments. Because of that, it is important that we view the process as an entire system rather than focusing on single participants. At the same time, we recognize that the tax administration works best when there's open communication and collaboration. We are committed to partnering with taxpayers, industry representatives, the Board of Equalization, and policymakers to identify areas where greater clarity, consistency, and efficiency can benefit everyone involved. Today's discussion is an important opportunity not only to better understand the challenges that may be identified, but also to explore practical solutions. The California Assessors Association stands ready to be part of those conversations. We believe meaningful progress comes through collaboration, thoughtful analysis, and shared commitment to administering the tax law in a manner that is both equitable and predictable. We appreciate the board's willingness to convene this hearing and look forward to a productive discussion that advances our shared goal of supporting affordable housing while preserving the integrity and uniform administration of California's property tax system. My esteemed fellow assessors are here virtually today. Assessor Shelley Scott from Marin County and Assessor Nisa Flagor from Santa Clara County. Our goal is to create context for our work, highlight known concerns, and provide a future forward perspective. They also have with them exemption subject matter experts to answer questions both after we present and after we hear from other participants. I did want to highlight that we have become aware of concerns and frustrations around the implementation of AB 2353, chaptered in 2024. At our CAA board meeting last week, we did bring this to the association as an issue. Assessor Flagor from Santa Clara will share more in the background of this legislation and the role of assessors, but I did want to share that as an organization, we are bringing this topic to our August regional conference and we'll add it to the agenda of our standards committee. The focus on the standards committee is to ensure consistency and share best practices across the state. Thank you, and I look forward to today's conversation. I now want to introduce Assessor Shelley Scott from Marin County, who will share more about the welfare exemption.
Thank you, President DePaul. The welfare exemption is a California property tax exemption that allows qualifying nonprofit organizations to receive a partial or a full exemption from property taxes when the property is used exclusively for qualifying purposes. Today, we're focusing specifically on affordable housing under the charitable use provisions, and for affordable housing projects to qualify, several legal requirements must be met. And generally, the organization or the managing general partner must first obtain clearance certifications from the State Board of Equalization, and the property must meet requirements established by the California Constitution and the Revenue and Taxation Code. And then here's where the assessor comes in. Our job is to determine whether the property's use qualifies for the exemption, and that means reviewing the application, verifying ownership and use, requesting additional information, and when necessary, sometimes conducting an investigation when appropriate, also determining the extent of the exempt use and making any needed assessment role corrections. The exemption process has two parts. The first filing establishes eligibility, but it doesn't meet approval. It's not permanent. So because the eligibility is based on the property ownership, use, and occupancy as of the lien date, property owners must file an annual claim to demonstrate that they continue to qualify. And while this process can seem more involved than other property tax exemptions, each step is there for a reason, and our responsibility is to make sure that the exemption is applied fairly, consistently, and with the law that allows it. So county assessors understand how important housing affordability is to our communities throughout California. We are committed to administering the welfare exemption consistently, accurately, and with efficiencies, whenever it's possible. And while continuing to look for ways to improve this process and provide better service to our applicants. And with that, I'd like to introduce Assessor Nisa Flagor, who will discuss some of the practical challenges that counties face in administering the exemption and where delays occur, and where opportunities to improve the process can occur. Assessor Flagor.
Thank you, Assessor Scott and President DePaul. I want to also personally thank Chair Lieber, the board, and BOE staff for giving us this opportunity to engage in constructive dialogue. You have heard from my colleagues about the welfare exemption, the assessor's role, and our statewide commitment to efficient, predictable, and transparent processes. With that in mind, we want to share some of the challenges in the welfare exemption approval process with the goal of identifying potential solutions and a path forward. With me today in Santa Clara County, our Deputy Assessor Autumn Young and Exemption Supervisor Jared Gregory. Assessors are responsible for determining whether a property's use qualifies for an exemption. Determining eligibility for the welfare exemption is one of the most technically complex responsibilities in the property tax administration. Assessors often navigate complicated ownership structures, multiple funding and regulatory programs, mixed-use developments, annual changes in occupancy, evolving statutory requirements, and incomplete documentation, all while operating with limited administrative resources. Applying detailed statutory requirements to increasingly sophisticated affordable housing projects requires labor-intensive reviews and specialized subject matter expertise. No surprise to this group, this process gets more heightened interest and scrutiny from different stakeholder groups because on the one hand, it gives certain property owners an exemption. And on the other hand, an exemption results in value being taken off the roll, leading to less property tax revenue for recipient jurisdictions. To all these different stakeholders, we emphasize the role of the assessor is to apply the applicable laws in our review of the applications. Although we have a deep understanding of the need for more affordable housing in California and appreciate the work that has been done to support the development of more affordable housing, the role of the assessor is limited. Let me first address the process delay concern. When we look closely at where delays occur, we consider the entire system President DePaul described, a process co-administered by the BOE and county assessors, relying on coordination among applicants, lenders, permitting agencies, tax collectors, and other county departments. Several steps in the process are within the assessor's control. Reviewing the documentation, conducting site inspections, and verifying use. These steps are required by law, and we continue to seek ways to improve consistency, streamline workflows, share best practices, leverage technology, and communicate more effectively with applicants. The CAA is already working towards statewide electronic filing solutions to improve both the applicant experience and administrative efficiency. We also want to acknowledge that each assessor's office has its own technology system, funding, and human resources challenges. Other factors that contribute to delays relate to assessors not getting the information they need to legally approve an exemption. Incomplete or inaccurate filings remain one of the most common causes of delays statewide. This includes missing certificates, incomplete applications, construction not yet at the required stage, unresolved ownership or financing issues, and statutory filing deadlines. Although the assessors are committed to reducing delays, we need to identify ways to do that without compromising the integrity of the process or the demonstration of public benefit. Areas where we see real opportunity to improve the application process are better guidance, improved forms, electronic tools, and enhanced applicant education. This could significantly reduce follow-up requests and allow complete applications to move more quickly. Today may also be an opportunity for us to take the questions and concerns we hear today about the application process and convert those to FAQs for applicants. Another area of concern is the apparent lack of consistent application across the assessor's offices statewide. We support having a uniform approach among assessor's offices. And applicants should have the confidence that all assessors are committed to administering the exemption uniformly across California. Please note that the review of a welfare exemption application is case specific, and each application must be reviewed as such. Therefore, an affordable housing developer may believe that the development they're doing in Marin County, for example, is exactly the same as the one they're doing in Santa Clara County. But there may in fact be differences in the developments that result in a different application of the exemption. Where statutes leave room for differing interpretations, however, additional guidance from the BOE could support greater consistency and predictability. Our shared objective is simple. Applicants should clearly understand what is required. Complete applications should move efficiently, and every qualifying organization should receive the exemption it is entitled to under the law. I'd also like to touch on the CAA's legislative review work. The Ledge Committee evaluates all proposed legislation affecting assessors, focusing on the administrative impact and collaborating with sponsors and authors to support clarity and consistency. We review proposals through operational, legal, technological, fiscal, and taxpayer impact lenses, and aim to stay away from legislative policy. We also advocate strongly that the language in the bill is clear to avoid any confusion or ambiguity in its application, that the roles are not placed on assessors that do not fall within our expertise or current functions, and also for any education and funding that would be required to support the assessor's implementation of a new law. Of current concern, as President DePaul mentioned, is the implementation of AB 2353. As a reminder, the CAA worked closely with our lobbyist, the author, tax collectors, and other stakeholders to clarify roles and responsibilities while expressing concerns about administration. Recently, some of the CAA leadership met with state leadership, and as Assessor DePaul mentioned, subsequently brought this issue to our membership. We're gathering information from counties on how treasurer tax collectors are implementing the law and identifying best practices. As part of this process, we want to review whether there are expectations being placed on the assessors that the law doesn't require. And if there are areas within our responsibility, we are ready to work with the BOE and industry leaders to identify ways to improve those areas. Let me end by saying all 58 counties stand ready to work collaboratively with the BOE, housing providers, and our state and local partners to find practical, administrative, regulatory, technological, and legislative improvements that reduce unnecessary delays while preserving the integrity of the welfare exemption. Thank you again for including the assessors in this very important discussion.
Thank you, and thank you to all three assessors. I know that both Assessor Flagger and Assessor Scott are very short on time today, but I appreciate your participation so much, as well as Assessor DePaul. And they are very welcome words that the CIA is digging into the issues and is looking for where the breakdown is. And we certainly do not want to expect more of the assessors than they're able to do within their jurisdiction. And like you, we are on a hunt for exactly where the problems lie. And so appreciate your participation so much. And I wanted to go on now to JT Harich-Mack, who is Policy Director of the Nonprofit Housing Association of Northern California. And he has a presentation for us, and he will be introducing the other subject matter experts. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Chair Lieber, members of the board. Thank you for having us. My name is J.T. Hirschmack, Policy Director from the Nonprofit Housing Association of Northern California. Since 1979, we've represented nonprofit and mission-driven affordable developers across the 9 counties that make up the San Francisco Bay Area. On behalf of our members, I wanted to thank you for the roundtable that we had on April 29th and for engaging with our members directly since then. We followed up in writing on June 3rd, and today we really appreciate the chance to walk the full board through those same issues in person and hear from advocates and developers that are living these issues. I want to frame this the same way that we framed our letter to you. We come at this with a shared interest with all the other agencies and offices involved here. A welfare tax exemption process that is consistent, navigable, and timely is better for our members and for county assessors alike. It's ultimately about how much affordable housing California can actually produce and preserve. I want to introduce our panel briefly. I'll have them introduce themselves very briefly before we revisit their particular subject matters throughout the course of this presentation, but just wanted to give you a sense of the breadth of experiences that we have here. Why don't you start us?
Hi, good afternoon, Chair and members and the public. My name is Taisha Watts. I am the Associate Policy Director at the California Housing Partnership. The partnership was created in 1988 with the legislature and governor in order to help increase the supply of affordable housing and sustainability. And I'll pass it to my other colleagues.
Good afternoon, Chair Lieber and members of the board. Thank you so much. My name is Heather Bromfield, and I am an Associate Director at Enterprise Community Partners, which is a national affordable housing nonprofit, and I work out of our Northern California office.
Good afternoon, Chair Lieber and the board. My name is Jen Collins, and I am the Operations and Finance Director of the Oakland Community Land Trust. I'm also a resident, and I represent the California Community Land Trust Network as well.
Hello, Chair and Board. Brian Dove, Senior Director of Asset Management with Eden Housing. So Eden Housing is a nonprofit affordable housing developer owner with properties throughout the state.
Good afternoon, Chair and Board. I'm Trent Eskew with Pacific Housing, a nonprofit affordable housing company. It's been around since 1999 with over 175 properties throughout California and various resident services that we administer at our apartment communities.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the board. My name is Paul Schaefer, and with the California Council for Affordable Housing. We like to describe ourselves as the representatives of the full continuum of the affordable housing industry, including tax credit investors, syndicators, property managers, and developers. Under our management, we have under our membership, we have about 350,000 affordable units in the state of California. And thank you for the opportunity.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next slide here has everybody's name and title. That's all right. We have slides here with us, so why don't we, after that, you pull up and go to the next slide after that. And Taisha's going to start us with an introduction to the tax exemption itself.
Yes, so you've heard earlier about the importance of the welfare tax exemption, but for nonprofit housing developers, the welfare exemption helps to make housing a housing deal pencil out. Affordable housing operates on thin margins. Property taxes are often one of the largest fixed annual costs in an affordable housing operating budget. And because rents are restricted, that cost cannot be passed on to residents. When nonprofit developers are putting together their budgets to determine whether a project can move forward, lenders and LIHTC investors underwrite the assumption that the exemption applies. That assumption is baked in before shovels ever go into the ground. So when exemption doesn't apply cleanly or on time, it isn't an abstract compliance issue. It directly threatens debt cover ratios and project feasibility. And today, that risk isn't hypothetical. Developers are waiting 1 to 3 years to secure welfare tax exemption approval, and that doesn't include the additional time to receive refunds. 58 county assessors are each administering one statewide exemption, with wide variation in how it applied. That inconsistency forces affordable housing developers, diverts hundreds of thousands of dollars in significant staff time away from building and preserving housing to navigating the exemption itself. Well, we are here today. We have recommendations that we want to put forward and be a thought partner with you all, and I'll pass it to my colleague JT to go into details.
Absolutely. Can we go 2 slides? There we go. All right, so I'm just going to preview these now, and we'll go into them one by one. But the first one is to create guidance on compliance with AB 2353. We've heard this already here. The second one would be that the BOE can promote faster welfare tax exemption qualification for the exemption by county assessors. The third one is to create or clarify performance standards and documentation requirements to receive your welfare tax exemption. And 4, to partner with us on informal outreach to specific counties where there may be further issues. If we can go to the next slide. The first recommendation we have here, AB 2353 compliance. This was meant to solve a real cash flow problem. It lets a developer withhold the taxes that the exemption will ultimately forgive while the application is pending instead of paying and waiting years for a refund. This is a good law. We have the sponsor here with us as well. And the trouble has been in the implementation. The 3 obstacles we're facing here. First, a lot of taxing authorities and transactional partners simply aren't aware of this authority yet. Second, even where the county recognizes it, title companies and lenders often won't honor the hold. They want to see the liability cleared, which can stall an escrow. Third, permanent loan conversion is a pinch point. To convert from construction to permanent financing, an owner has to clear the outstanding tax obligation, and in pre-approval status, that can be a substantial unbudgeted sum. So we'd like to ask the board to offer guidance on AB 2353 compliance, whether it's a letter to assessors or other updated publications, with 3 concrete pieces here. Model language so that assessors can use to confirm the hold. We'll go to the next slide here. Second, direct outreach to title insurers and lenders so that the statute is actually recognized in escrow and loan conversion practice. And third, a BOE-issued certificate, confirmation, something that the developers can present to the county tax collectors, demonstrating that they are in fact eligible for this under 2353. So we now have, again, Taisha Watts from the California Housing Partnership and Paul Schaefer from the California Council of Affordable Housing, who can speak a little bit more to how this implementation has been breaking down in practice. So first, Taisha.
Yes. So once a nonprofit developer has submitted their welfare tax exemption application and has shown a reservation of LIHTC credits or an award of funds from the Department of Housing and Community Development, now renamed HDFC, they're reasonably operating on the assumption that the exemption will be granted. Recognizing that nonprofit developers needed relief while those applications were being processed, the California Housing Partnership co-sponsored AB 2353 with the Assemblymember Ward and the State Controller's Office to allow nonprofit affordable housing developers to withhold tax payments without penalty while their welfare exemption applications are under review. In developing this bill, CHP worked directly with assessors and county tax collectors to align it with current practices, including aligning the bill dates, December 10, 2025 through April 10, 2031, with the property tax cycle. and to build an annual verification and shared eligibility list between tax collectors and assessors, so oversight and accountability continue without adding administrative burdens to either entity. But now that the bill has been signed into law, we're seeing real barriers to nonprofit developers actually being able to access the relief they need. As this slide shows, there's a lack of awareness among taxing authorities and transactional partners, title companies, and lenders unwilling to honor the hold, and permanent loan conversion remaining a barrier even where the hold is honored upfront. The recurring theme across every testimony you heard today is that developers are being forced to carry the burden of a broken implementation system, paying hundreds of thousands of dollars upfront, chasing refunds, navigating county offices that don't know the law exists, and then fighting with lenders and title companies on top of all of that. The law was supposed to relieve the burden. Without coordinated guidance from the BOE, developers are essentially left to do this outreach themselves, educating their assessors, working through their member associations to advocate on their behalf, and negotiating with lenders and title companies to prevent being penalized for benefit that legislators already granted them. We believe that by bringing assessors, the BOE, county tax collectors to the same table, we can remedy this by starting with our recommendations that the BOE issue guidance on AB 2353 compliance. And I'll pass it over to my colleague, Paul, to give you actual real-life testimonies of what's happening on the ground.
Thank you very much, Taisha. And if we can skip to the next slide. And
Two slides.
Two slides, yep, thank you. Alrighty. So affordable housing serving low-income Californians falls squarely within the purpose and the intent of California's welfare exemption. For our members, the exemption is not simply a tax benefit, it is a critical component of the financial structure that makes affordable housing possible. The value of the exemption varies by property, but for many developments, it represents hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. Those savings are not just excess revenues, they are reinvested directly into property operations, resident services, capital repairs, and long-term preservation efforts. In many cases, the exemption is what allows a property to remain financially viable while continuing to serve households with the lowest incomes. Just as importantly, the value created by the exemption strengthens the project's financial feasibility, allowing affordable housing providers to leverage additional financing and assemble capital necessary to develop housing in one of the nation's most expensive real estate markets. While the welfare exemption is governed by state law, the experience of obtaining and maintaining the exemption is not always consistent across California. To be clear, county staff do outstanding work. Administering these exemptions is a complex responsibility, often carried out while managing significant workloads with limited resources. However, the challenges arise when staffing levels are unable to keep pace with demand, when application requirements vary from county to county, or when applicants encounter different review processes depending on jurisdiction. The result can be a system that feels inconsistent and unpredictable despite operating under the same statutory frameworks. For example, in some counties, a welfare exemption application may be reviewed and approved within a matter of months. In others, the same application may take 1, 2, or even 3 years to receive a final determination. During that time, affordable housing providers are often required to continue to pay the full property tax obligation, even though the property was developed with the expectation that it qualifies for this exemption. These delays create real financial consequences. Owners may be forced to draw down operating reserves, secure bridge financing, deter maintenance projects, or redirect scarce resources simply to cover property taxes that may ultimately be refunded once the exemption is approved. Every dollar spent managing administrative delays is a dollar that cannot be reinvested in our residents, property management improvements, or the development of additional affordable housing. What makes this particularly challenging is the eligibility for the requirement, or for the eligibility for the exemption is generally well understood. Affordable housing developments receive the welfare exemption are typically subject to recorded affordability restrictions, extensive regulatory oversight, and long-term commitments to serving lower-income Californians. These properties operate within highly regulated environments that clearly establish their charitable purpose and public benefit. Yet, despite this, the timing and administration of the exemption can vary significantly across the jurisdictions. That is why Assembly Bill 2353, authored by Assemblymember Ward and chaptered in 2024, is such an important step forward. The legislation addressed a longstanding challenge facing affordable housing providers: the requirement to pay property taxes while waiting for welfare exemption applications to be processed, only to receive those funds back later when the exemption is approved. In many cases, providers must borrow money to cover those tax obligations and absorb financial costs that are never recovered. AB 2353 recognizes that applicants should not be financially penalized while government review is still underway and sought to reduce the unnecessary burdens created by the process. The affordable housing community strongly supports the legislation because of the certainty, fairness, and the cost saving it was expected to provide. However, despite its passage, implementation has remained challenging. Over the past year, members of my organization have consistently expressed a strong desire to see AB 2353 implemented in a practical and uniform manner throughout the state. One of our members has been working closely with the Los Angeles County assessors to better understand how the law can be operationalized in a way that works for all parties involved. I'm encouraged to report that meaningful progress has recently been made through these conversations, and we appreciate the willingness of the LA County Assessor's Office to engage constructively while broader guidance continues to be developed. Based on our discussion with members across California, the most significant barriers to implementation appear to be lender uncertainty regarding how to recognize and honor the payment hold provisions established by statute, as well as inconsistent awareness among taxing authorities regarding the practical application of the law itself. These challenges are not insurmountable, but they do require coordination, communication, and clear guidance to ensure the legislature's intent is fully realized. From our perspective, the goal should be simple. Affordable housing providers should receive a consistent, predictable, and timely review process regardless of where they operate in California. We recognize that county assessors and tax collectors are managing increasing workloads and competing priorities. This is not a criticism of local staff. Rather, it is a recognition that the system functions best when counties have clear statewide guidance, adequate resources, and administrative tools to support efficient and consistent implementation. CCAH stands ready to work collaboratively with this board, county officials, and other stakeholders to identify practical solutions that reduce administrative burdens and improve outcomes for every party involved. As California continues to invest billions of dollars in affordable housing, in housing production and preservation, it is equally important that the existing programs operate as intended. Every unnecessary delay increases costs, and every inconsistency creates uncertainty. And ultimately, those impacts are felt by the affordable housing communities that California is working so hard to support. To achieve the intent of AB 2353, we encourage the development of practical implementation tools, including standardized language that counties can use to confirm that penalties and interest that are being held in abeyance for qualifying properties, outreach to lenders and title insurers so that the statute is appropriately recognized in financing and escrow practices, and in consideration of the BOE issued certification or confirmation documentation that housing providers can present to lenders and local taxing authorities to demonstrate eligibility for the protections established under AB 2353. We encourage the board to continue working with counties, housing stakeholders, and policymakers to identify opportunities for greater consistency, transparency, and efficiency in administration of the welfare exemption. By doing so, we can ensure that the important program functions as intended, not as an administrative hurdle, but as a tool that preserves affordable housing, supports low-income Californians, and advances the state's broader housing goals. I thank you for your time and consideration, and I will pass it back to JT.
All right, we'll have Taisha close this section.
Yes. We want to thank the partners for ensuring that this bill was brought forward. We want to thank the Controller's Office for continued work, the nonprofit development company and partners who are on the front lines every day ensuring that we are building affordable housing for California's residents, the chair and the board members who continue to ensure that these laws are implemented correctly, and also the different assessors who wanted to be thought partners in ensuring that it is applied applicably correctly throughout each county. I'll turn it over to JT.
All right, thank you. We'll go forward 2 slides here. So recommendation 2, and our ask here is about predictability. We're looking for perhaps a recommended time frame for approval, a clear statewide baseline for what a complete application looks like, a recognition of the monitoring regimes that our members already operate under. At the state, we have TCAC, we have HCD. Locally in the region, we have BOFA, the Bay Area Housing Finance Agency, and we have local regulatory agreements with cities and counties that are funding this affordable housing. We're curious if we can make these acceptable to counties in lieu of duplicative documentation. Our members are already burdened with demonstrating much of the similar requirements as well. And here to speak to that, we have Brian Dove of Eden Housing on the approval and refund timelines and what the carrying cost looks like. Can we go to the next slide?
Thank you. So Eden Housing is one of California's largest affordable housing organizations. For more than 55 years, we've been developing and operating affordable apartment communities throughout California, providing stable homes for over 13,000 low-income families. My job is to oversee the long-term performance of our communities and indirectly the health of our nonprofit organizations so we can continue to provide affordable housing. When we break ground for a new construction project or start rehab for a major renovation, within 90 days, we prepare the first filing welfare exemption applications and submit it to the state and the applicable county assessor. As an aside, the state BOE process for the SCC and OCC is wonderful. Quick turnaround, they get it. In addition to those first filings, we also prepare the annual filings every year for over 160 communities in over 20 counties. As you can imagine, it's a big effort for this season. We bring in temporary staff. Our executives need to hand sign multiple documents for every property. And when it's over, we throw a celebration. There's a whole other added season after we've submitted the designated applications, responding to additional requests for information or denial of claims from the county assessors. When I'm not looking at financial spreadsheets or putting together these applications, occasionally I get to attend grand opening ceremonies for one of our apartment communities. There's balloon arches, there's tours of apartments and the energy efficiency features. There's live music, food from a local business. There's also a long list of speakers. The state agencies, California Tax Credit Allocation Committee, CalHFA, HCD, sometimes all three put money in the deal. The county, the city, maybe the mayor shows up to speak. HUD, usually state or federal elected representative is there. They all provide upfront financial support and a lifetime of monitoring to ensure their investment was worth it. The speakers typically discuss the village it takes to develop affordable housing. This layer of funding of affordable housing is pretty typical. It's not perfect, it's not quick, but it is a model that produces affordable housing across the state. My favorite part about these grand openings are towards the end when usually a resident speaks, usually for the first time in front of a crowd. And so they talk about how it's literally changed their lives, from couch surfing, sleeping in their car, to finally having an apartment they can afford. So coming back to the topic here, it takes many counties longer to review and approve a first filing application than it takes to construct, lease up, and celebrate at a grand opening event. While we wait years for county assessors to review our paperwork to determine if we've actually built an affordable housing community, our organization must pay the full property tax and spend countless hours of staff time following up and providing additional paperwork and verifications. For what other state and local agencies who also regulate and verify and celebrate these communities. We're dealing now with one particular county who took over 4 years to approve and let the tax collector know that, yes, you've built an affordable community. They're now telling us that our 4-year statute of limitation has run out to collect our tax refund. And so we must go to the County Board of Supervisors and have a hearing to convince them that they return our first-year property taxes. So we believe there's an opportunity to modernize and streamline this process, recognize existing monitoring by other agencies, set reasonable timeframes for approval, and provide assistance or facilitation for us with the county assessors and the tax collectors. So thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we go to the next slide? And then the next one. Recommendation 3 on performance standards and documentation. This is where the county-to-county variation is most significant. Inconsistent administration means unpredictable paperwork, unclear privacy protections for tenants' personal finance information, and penalties that are for things that are outside the developer's control. Specifically, inconsistent tenant income certification requirements. Some counties are providing checklists, others do not. Denials of the exemption for on-site services, community spaces that serve residents, penalties on units that are vacant for more than 90 days. With no distinction for no-fault delays, for special needs lease-up, for coordinated entry referrals, for capital work done on the unit between tenants, and duplicative requirements for projects financed without tax credits like community land trusts. So we're asking the board to provide clarity and uniformity on the acceptable administrative procedures where practice is inconsistent. Guidance on both the minimum and maximum documentation counties should be able to accept or request. Two practical items I'll touch on here: accepting electronic signatures wherever wet signatures aren't legally required, and posting every county's required welfare tax exemption documentation on the BOE website so applicants know what they are actually expected to provide. We'll hear from Jen Collins from the Oakland CLT, Trent Askew from Pacific Housing, and Heather Bromfield from Enterprise on the documentation burden and penalties. We'll go in that order. Jen.
All right, so my name's Jen. I'm with the Oakland Community Land Trust.
We'll go to the next slide there, sorry.
Oh yeah, for sure, next slide, yeah.
One more.
All right, and so we so I know Heather's going to talk a lot about preservation work, but basically, in short, what we do as a community land trust is we are focused on ownership. So, but in that process, we're purchasing homes and buildings where the tenants are at risk of eviction for different reasons. They actually approach us, and then we step in to buy that building to stabilize their housing. And then we work towards converting them to ownership. So there is often a rental period between the time when we purchase the building and the time when they are able to purchase it from us and have that ownership. We have different models for that. But so that's where the welfare tax exemption comes into play for us, because it is only for rental properties, right? So we have this window where we're trying to support the tenants essentially as they transition into ownership. So that's where community land trusts kind of fit into this. Generally speaking, our projects are very small, actually. They don't qualify for, we're not doing LIHTC deals. We're not in the same boat as a lot of these guys as far as that financing. We are pulling together different funding sources. And many of our projects do have regulatory agreements and they have municipal funds. So right now, we do also have the other legal document process. I'm not going to speak to that at all right now. So all of the issues that I'm going to describe actually refer to properties where there is a regulatory agreement in place and there is a third-party monitor, because I feel like that's something that's really important to highlight, right? That all of the additional monitoring that's put on us is duplicative because we're already submitting our data to the monitoring agency. And we're already also submitting that to our auditors. We're nonprofits, we get audited, we have compliance as part of our audit. There's a lot of checks and balances built into our processes. All right, and so one thing that I will say, the issues that folks have talked about happen across the state in terms of delays. So, you know, as Brian was discussing, there are specific issues with specific counties, but delays are kind of a spread across the board. And the important thing to understand about how that affects community land trusts is because we are small organizations, when we are, and because our projects are small, actually the operating budget, it's very narrow. We don't have a lot of margins. So if we're paying that expense, it's actually coming out of organizational operating funds, which is the only place it can come from usually. So we're taking our organization, like money that would go to hiring staff, and we're paying property taxes for our properties out of that. So just to be really clear, like what that looks like for small organizations, it's a very high burden that's placed on us. And so there's that. I think some of the other issues that I'm going to talk to are really specific to a particular county. And I just want to be really clear about that. Like I know that, for example, in LA County, they do have the CLTs there, have good relationship with the assessor, and that their projects are turning around relatively more smoothly. They have some delays, but I know that there's a lot of just confidence in, okay, you have a regulatory agreement, you're complying with your regulatory agreement, we're going to move the project forward and support the housing. So I want to make sure that we're, you know, there is just so much difference in terms of how this is being implemented right across the state that it's important to highlight that, and that is part of what we're trying to address. But, you know, in the county where we operate, for example, we are actually being asked, in addition to, you know, the usual, the BOE forms, everything that you think of as standard, in addition to, you know, wet signatures, signs, affidavits from residents, from households, from staff. We also have to submit tenants' personal data. So we're talking tax returns, pay stubs, stuff that has like identifying information about our tenants to the county, where there's no guarantee of how that's being held, what the security looks like. And it's very sensitive information that we're putting at risk. And so I think the biggest thing, I think, for us, for Oak CLT, that we could get out of this is like, there has to be some limit, right? On like, what can the county, I mean, I understand there's this compliance issue, but I'm talking about annual filings here. I'm not talking about first filings either. I'm talking about every single year, you know, and again, it has taken us in excess of 4 years to get approved, and we've had the same problem of, oh, well, now you got approved, but you got to go to the Board of Supervisors for that, right? Same problem. But even after it's approved, for every filing, we have to go around and hunt down tenant data. And sometimes, a lot of times, there's back and forth around like, oh, well, you gave us the pay stubs, but do you have the tax return? Oh, you gave it. And I want to be really clear. So our residents, again, we're doing preservation work, so we are usually dealing with properties that are, you know, in significant distress, residents who are extremely vulnerable, who are at risk of homelessness. So what that looks like for extremely vulnerable populations is often you're dealing with people who are not banked. They're getting paid in cash. They don't have tax returns necessarily. They don't have pay stubs necessarily, right? So when we're doing our certification and like working with them, you know, we're getting affidavits. We're talking to them because we're doing economic development with our residents. We are engaged in conversations about their income. But to have this additional, you know, we've had issues of where basically we've been looking at a denial of an exemption just because our tenants don't have the right kind of documentation. And I think that's got to stop, because essentially what we are doing is we are saving the county money because we are preventing these people from becoming homeless. Like, we are literally their last line of defense. We have residents who've lost their income and haven't been able to pay rent in more than a year that we have supported in their housing at that time. They would not get that from any other housing provider. So we're saving the county money by doing the work that we do, but this is being put on us as an additional burden. And it's also taking a lot of county time. Just want to be really clear. Like, the county is having people come in that aren't part of the exemptions unit to cover staff hours and get paid overtime, presumably, because they email on like Sundays and in the middle of the night. So presumably they're working overtime, chasing down tax forms for one member of one household. This is the amount of money that's being saved by having that intensity of monitoring is not, it's not worth it. Like, they're spending more money to monitor us, and we're actually saving the taxpayer by the work that we're doing. So I just really want to be really clear about that. Yeah, and I think that's, I'm sorry, oh no, I'm not past time. Boy, I really thought I was I'm gonna start talking, and I'm just gonna keep talking, and they're gonna be poking me like, shut up.
No, I think you're just painting a very vivid picture for us, and message 1,000% received.
Yeah.
And there are whole books out there about administrative burdens on people of very low resources, and often, you know, co-occurring trauma and disability and other barriers. And yeah, this is where I am getting it at a very deep level. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jen. Trent.
All right. Thank you, Jen, for your testimony, and good afternoon, Chair and members of the board. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak today. I introduced myself earlier, but I'm Trent Eskew, and I serve as Director of Asset Management for Pacific Housing, a California-based nonprofit affordable housing organization. For the past decade, I've worked in affordable housing compliance and property tax administration, overseeing a portfolio of approximately 175 affordable housing properties throughout California. My role involves working directly with the Board of Equalization, the County Assessed Properties Division, county assessors, regulatory agencies, and property management companies to administer welfare exemptions across our portfolio. My issue today, I'd just like to take a few minutes to focus on what JT mentioned earlier, a section from Revenue and Tax Code 214G in regards to vacant affordable units, which provides that units reserved for lower income households at an affordable rent that are temporarily vacant due to tenant turnover or repairs shall still be treated as occupied for purposes of the welfare exemption. The statute clearly recognizes this reality because vacancies are a part of operating affordable housing, particularly during initial lease-up and periods of tenant turnover. In one county where we operate, units vacant more than 90 days were automatically removed from the exempt unit count. We voluntarily disclosed these longer vacancies and shared our leasing struggles during the county review process because we believed we were complying with the statute in good faith. This was not an established project with chronically vacant units either. It was a newly leased senior affordable housing community in a smaller metropolitan area. Certain income restricted units simply required more time to lease in this area. The result was the project's welfare exemption was reduced from 100% to nearly 92% exemption because those units were no longer considered occupied by qualified households for purposes of the welfare exemption. Affordable housing providers should not be penalized by the welfare exemption program during lease-up periods or periods of extended vacancy because demand for certain income-restricted units take longer to materialize. Over the past decade, I've seen many changes to the welfare exemption program that have been positive for affordable housing. Legislative updates have expanded exemption eligibility to mirror modern affordable housing programs, allowing affordable units to continue to qualify under higher income thresholds if the tenants continue to be charged an affordable rent. At the same time, those changes have increased administrative complexity for both nonprofit owners and county assessors alike, requiring more documentation, more review, and ultimately longer review timelines. I know I'm not alone in this experience, and you've heard, and I expect you'll hear similar examples from other affordable housing providers today. We encourage the board to consider whether existing guidance on specifically section 214G3DI could be clarified to promote consistent administration across counties while also avoiding additional reporting requirements that are not contemplated by the current filing process or filing forms. I recognize county assessors often have a difficult job. My comments today are not intended as criticism of county staff, but rather to illustrate where additional guidance from the board could benefit both assessors and affordable housing providers without the need to increase reporting requirements. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you, Trent. My name is Heather Bromfield, and again, I represent the Northern California Office of Enterprise Community Partners, a national affordable housing nonprofit. Over the last 40 plus years, our organization has helped finance over 1 million units of affordable housing nationally. And we also provide technical assistance to partner organizations. We conduct research and we engage in policy advocacy. The team I lead at Enterprise engages in technical assistance for affordable housing providers and convenes them regularly in Northern California with the goal of surfacing opportunities and challenges for creating more affordable housing in an efficient and cost-effective manner. While I'm not an affordable housing developer myself, I support the organizations that are engaged in this work on the ground. And next slide, please. More specifically, I lead a team that supports affordable housing developers and community land trusts across Northern California to purchase market rate buildings using public subsidy sources to convert these properties to restricted affordable housing. This is the strategy that Jen had mentioned earlier. We refer to this innovative strategy as affordable housing preservation, and we are seeking to scale this work, which is faster and can be 30 to 50% more affordable than building new affordable housing from the ground up. We see the State Board of Equalization as having a tremendous opportunity right now to help practitioners around the state advance this affordable housing strategy. Next slide, please. The current California SBOE Assessor's Handbook states that eligible affordable housing groups must fill out a BOE form and confirm that the affordable housing group has verified the correct income limits are being used. However, due to lack of familiarity with affordable housing preservation projects, assessors' offices sometimes create their own very well-intentioned but ultimately burdensome procedures that can go beyond these baseline requirements to document household incomes at first and annual filings. These procedures vary from county to county due to this lack of statewide guidance on when additional audits of incomes are appropriate. In some areas, extensive documentation requirements currently serve as a disincentive for organizations who might consider doing affordable housing preservation, but who are cognizant of the extensive staffing needed to procure this documentation from households. Affordable housing groups may also be deterred from engaging in preservation because of the uncertain carrying costs associated with paying property taxes, as others on this panel have mentioned, for over a year, sometimes over 2 years, sometimes over 3 years, even as they restrict rents as affordable to low-income households. It's important to say again that although many of these projects are not utilizing the low-income housing tax credit program, the vast majority of them are already regulated by a public deed restriction from a local agency, and they are already engaging in annual monitoring and compliance to ensure that the projects are functioning as low-income housing. Next slide, please. One of our nonprofit preservation partners who preferred to remain anonymous submitted their first filing for a property in February 2021 and received their award nearly 3 years later in November 2024. This partner remarked, quote, "Income certification of residents on properties without tax credits is the primary driver of the time it took to obtain the exemption. There was a general lack of understanding in our county of a welfare tax exemption on a property without tax credits. We first filed with the assessor and provided an affidavit of resident income from each household, which I've heard is accepted in a neighboring jurisdiction, and we were told this was insufficient. In an in-person meeting with the assessor, he said he sees the first filing as a way to audit resident incomes prior to the receipt of the welfare tax exemption. This puts an incredible financial burden on the organizations doing this work. We are not required by our regulatory agreements to do a tax credit tenant income certification with residents for income, as this is a tax credit form and is extensive, especially for folks who have never had to do income certifications or are generally nervous or mistrustful of handing over personal information to government entities for good reason." End quote. Unfortunately, this type of story is not unusual among our partners. Next slide, please. The good news is that the SBOE has the authority to prevent these kinds of situations and to improve the outlook for preservation as an affordable housing creation strategy. Mr. Harachmak named some of these at the top of the section, including establishing a standardized floor and procedures and providing minimum documentation guidance, accepting e-signatures where possible, and posting the documents that counties may require on a public website. We further recommend that the SBOE do 2 things. One, pre-approve local and state affordable housing regulatory agreements and assure local assessors that they do not need to request additional backup income documentation for projects subject to these pre-approved public regulatory agreements. And second, the board could provide guidance to assessors' offices on when audits of household incomes are actually necessary. This may give local assessors cover so they don't feel compelled to audit all household incomes for every preservation project prior to a first filing. We believe this is a particularly urgent moment to act because within a few months, California voters will have the opportunity to vote on a state affordable housing bond. If approved by voters, the bond will fund a $200 million state subsidy source for a new program known as the Community Anti-Displacement Preservation Program, or CAP. Resolving inconsistencies and reducing an unnecessary administrative burden across jurisdictions could streamline the welfare tax exemption approvals process for projects funded by this program and better improve the utilization of precious public resources. Thank you so much for your time and for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we go to the next slide? All right, this brings us to our last recommendation, recommendation 4 on informal outreach. As you've heard, some of what we're describing is not statewide at all. It could be 1 or 2 counties with specific practice. So those may be easiest to fix, and we may not need formal board action at all to rectify these. Our ask is simply that the BOE partner with conveners like NPH to do targeted outreach to particular counties. We're happy to identify priority concerns, make members and their case files available to inform these conversations like you've heard in this presentation already. And this would address many existing issues, but for issues that may arise in the future, we would also be very interested in a structured way that affordable housing developers and advocates can ask for constituent support from your various offices, much the same way that a resident can reach out to their city council member if they're looking for help with a city department. We would welcome the chance to open the lines of communication with your staff to help find mutually agreeable and positive resolutions to our bottlenecks wherever they may arise. All right, next slide. So to recap here, we are asking for 4 considerations here. We think that the BOE should issue guidance on the AB 2353 implementation issues that we outlined today. To support faster qualification for the welfare tax exemption for our affordable housing developer members. 3, clarifying the performance standards and the required documentation, clarifying the minimums where they exist, and considering setting a maximum on the documentation requirement that can be required. And finally, 4, considering some informal outreach to specific counties and opening up lines of communication for future constituent supports in the future. And with that, I want to close the way that we opened here. I again want to re-emphasize here that we have a shared interest in finding resolution to this, that tax exemption process that's consistent, navigable, timely is better for our members, it's better for county assessors, and ultimately, these are benefits that our members, the residents that our members serve will feel. All of the residents of affordable housing in all of the 58 counties of California can enjoy a better funded building when they don't have time and staff cost and all of the other hard costs that are going into making sure that this welfare tax exemption is carefully performed in all of the complicated ways that we have outlined today. So we now have the rest of this panel here to take questions. If you have anything that we would like to go into more detail on, we would be happy to field that now. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you so much for providing so much information while also being concise about it. This is a very large topic, but you've given us specific areas and specific asks to drill down on. And I would very much like to see on a confidential basis which counties are the specific counties. And we can begin to work on that. All of the questions that I have were later answered by other panelists. So I don't have specific questions myself. I mean, it just seems to me that this has been a very long neglected area, absent the controller's good work in trying to draw these threads together to make some kind of a semblance of a torn and incomplete safety net. So I know that I'm going to be watching the hearing again and working with our staff to see what we can get as a reasonable timeline to get some of the requested guidance moving. And I see our executive director is making motions to come over.
I think I should know better. Good afternoon, Yvette Stowers. Gladly work with you, Chair Lieber, on the various issues. I was listening very diligently and gently, and I do have a question because you guys kept saying that the taxes were supposed to be withheld. And that was the intent of 2353. I'm looking at the actual enacted statute, and I'm not seeing anything that says withheld. It's saying that the tax collector is not to collect. So I need some clarification.
I haven't read it in a while, but if I do remember, I think that the AB 2353 says that there will not be penalties or fees attached if we do not pay.
It just says that. Yeah.
And so when a title company and a lender looks at that and they see you have not paid your property taxes, fine, we're not gonna you must pay in order us to lend on it. And I do remember this was part of the negotiations in creating the bill. Like, we just wanted it to say, you don't have to pay. And then we'll eventually review and approve it. If we find you did not qualify, then you must pay us and we can assess you and all that good stuff. I do want to point out, AB 2353 is only relevant, we only need that because the application process takes longer than 6 months to review and approve. like, this would not be necessary if we can submit an application, it can be reviewed and approved timely for affordable housing.
Yes, I think we have a number of other questions, and I just wanted to put into the hopper that it's incomprehensible that there could be an approved OCC from the BOE, which you said is very timely, and then all of the filings could be recognized as complete, and then it still doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't move to anywhere. And I think it's great that, the provisions that are in the ward bill of saying, well, you shouldn't be charged a penalty, but you're charged the cost of money. And so that's kind of the same on a practical basis as a penalty. That's something that really I find baffling and incredibly frustrating. But we'll go to our vice chair first.
Actually,
Great, thank you.
apologies to interrupt. Can we actually speak to the statute real quick?
Yes, please.
Yes, we want to clarify that that's the intent of the statute, and we have it, is that the interest and penalties are not supposed to be collected while the welfare tax exemption is being processed. That is what we're speaking to, that our nonprofit developers, those interest and penalties are accumulating, and they're now having to pay those back. So that's why it's diverting funds from their actual operating costs.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and that's a function of a timeline. So if we can get the WTE approved within 6 months, then the issue goes away. And so I'm just wondering if we could, Assessor DePaul?
Right. I do have a couple other counties on the line too that have a lot more of these, so I'm going to let them speak as well. It's not, so having the completed application is really helpful if the new construction is done, because there's certain things that have to qualify. I mean, it is by statute. So there are differences within assessors' offices that we could work on, but a lot of this is like defined by statute, and we're complying with the law. Okay. And so there are certain things, and I'm going to let Santa Clara opine. It looks like they jumped on camera about other things that would hold it up, but it isn't just bad practice a lot of times. Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to Santa Clara.
Okay, great.
Okay, Santa Clara, please.
Thank you, President DePaul. And of course, we agree with what President DePaul just representative, and we'll just expand on that. I have Jared Gregory, who is our exemption expert, who can talk specifically to the application of 2353 as to the issue just raised.
So, well, there's a couple of things. So with that specific bill, we would actually need to be notified by the tax collector that filed. It's not something that we would be able to actively monitor without information being supplied to us. In terms of delays concerning the review of applications that are submitted, this was touched on earlier, but the biggest delay is just where an application is filled out incorrectly or incompletely, because that requires going back and forth between us and the submitting organization. And the other thing that I would say about delays is that, unfortunately, for organizations that are submitting things correctly, when other organizations are not submitting things correctly, we have limited resources. And so the failure of other organizations to actually comply actually holds us up from processing applications that are submitted correctly. There's also competing priorities, right? So in Santa Clara County, for example, we receive thousands of annual filings per year, as well as hundreds of initial filings per year. And so there's competing interests between low-income housing developers, as well as religious organizations, other charitable nonprofits. In our county, I specifically deal with homeowners exemptions as well, disabled veterans, for-profit cemeteries. And so we have limited staffing resources, and there are plenty of squeaky wheels, and it's always difficult to figure out how we can prioritize those and get all of the applications processed timely.
And Thank you, Jared. And I'll just add, just looking at the 4 recommendations that were presented. Again, Santa Clara County and the other assessors are here willing and ready to work with the different stakeholder groups to identify solutions and how we can make the process better for all of us. Specific to recommendation 1, creating guidance regarding complying with this bill. We are completely in support of that recommendation, and we look forward to working with the BOE to ensure that there is guidance that relates to the expectations and the rules of the assessors that we can all follow to make sure that we can improve uniformity across the state. With regards to recommendation number 2, faster qualification for the welfare exemption. We also support that. I know it may differ from county to county, but again, our goal, fully aware of limited resources across the county and also in our own offices, but we're definitely supportive of steps we can all take to improve and expedite that review process. And we were taking notes on some of the pain points that we're hearing industry is experiencing. And we are going to take that back to our staff to see if that is something that, happens in Santa Clara County. And I'm sure President DePaul will also bring this up at our CAA meeting in 2 weeks. And then clarifying performance standards and required documentation. We look forward to working with the BOE on what a checklist could look like for this documentation requirement. But we do want to remind folks that the law actually allows each county, in addition to the defined documents that are required for this process, it does allow counties to seek any additional documentation that county deems necessary to review and approve the application. And so there has to be some flexibility there when we work with the BOE to identify what that checklist could look like. And then, of course, informal outreach to specific counties. I don't know Santa Clara County is on that list, but I know I can speak on behalf of the other assessors' offices where we're really here to work with the stakeholder groups, because if there are areas for us to improve, we really want to do that. So thank you again. And Deputy Assessor.
And I'll just speak to 2353 briefly. I worked with the author and sponsors and our lobbyists and our membership on that bill extensively. And what was really important to us is that the verification for that benefit was not held up by the assessor. So one of the challenges that we're trying to overcome is what we've heard much today, which is the delay of the application process. So we were really clear in working on that legislation components of eligibility for that benefit. It doesn't require an SCC or OCC. It just requires that you have submitted an application. It doesn't opine on whether that's a complete or correct application. It just says that the property owner has to show proof that they submitted an application, because we didn't want our eligibility requirements or that correctness to get in the way of that benefit. It says that they have to have funding, again, certified by the property owner. And then it has to have in the course of construction. And there was a lot of conversation about where the verification of course of construction came. And again, because ours is a regulatory process for what the course of construction means to be eligible, we didn't want our requirement, our regulatory requirement, to get in the way of that verification for that benefit. So in some, and I don't use this term lightly, so take this, it is somewhat of the responsibility of the property owner to certify that they have those things with the tax collector. So if we flipped the process to where the assessor was having to verify those documents for that benefit, we find ourselves back in that circular. We are verifying that which we are also concerned about the delay for. So speaking to the point of the 6 months, it's really important to understand that that property may qualify for the penalty and interest fees being waived before they are meeting eligibility requirements. So and that could be months, it could be a year, depending on when those other things are verified. So I want to make sure that's really clear that that is not a verification of eligibility, those things being submitted to the tax collector. Those are components of what we would look at and deem as eligible through our regulatory process.
Okay. Vice Chair, we're still on
Yeah, I
you.
just wanted to follow up. Thank you for that. So I guess I've got two questions. And this would be to Executive Director, would a letter to assessors help clarify?
I think the best step is to meet with the assessors at the assessors conference and talk about this and see how we're reading 214, and then come to an agreement on that, and then we can issue the letters to assessors.
Okay, great. And then I guess to the panel, do we need cleanup language for 2353 to provide clarity on some of the issues you've brought up? You mentioned lender and escrow clarity.
Maybe. I think there could be outreach to lenders as well to see what language on title, maybe there is some language that we can put on title that'll comfort them without change to regulation.
Is that something that we could help with at the BOE?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so that's something we could work on.
I want to also add that while we are stating that we want the BOE to come to the table, the assessors are willing to come to the table. It's also the county tax collectors, because under the provisions of the law, once they receive an eligible list of properties, they're the ones who are going to withhold the interest and penalties, and they have not been in this conversation. So we want to also put that it is also the tax collectors who are also a part of this problem of us not being able to implement AB 2353 correctly.
Great. So can you help clarify that, Assessor DePaul?
Yes, I'm happy to reach out to the Tax Collector Association and get a hold of their president. And I know that they were very engaged in forming the language. And I do believe Autumn spoke to that earlier, or maybe that was the other day. And so, but I'm happy to reach out and do a little outreach and get us all on the same page. And hopefully at least we can work on educating our members. There has been a lack of consistent awareness about this bill. I think we've all recognized that. Our associations recognize that. We are working towards implementing this more robustly and towards getting our membership a little bit more aware of what's going on and the processes that should be involved.
Well, thank you for the workshop and this, or not workshop, but for the informational presentation. I find it very helpful, and I think it's a matter of getting the right parties together in the room to provide more clarity. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Schaefer.
Yes, thank you. I was so impressed with how well you did your presentation and allocated the time and respected our time. And I've owned and operated some 300 housing units in California, Texas, Nevada, Arizona, and Maryland. And I've dealt with all levels of government and the Supreme Court of Arizona, would you believe, which in the Schaefer case held that even if the tenant doesn't have a security deposit because they used it for rent, you still have to give them a report as to what happened to the security deposit. And I didn't and got fined. I think, talking to Mr. Schaefer over here, the other Mr. Schaefer, I was disturbed to hear that some counties respond within 30 days and others take years to do something. And you know, in the courts, that used to be a problem with various courts taking forever to give you a response. And now there's a California rule of court, or it could be local rules or both, that say that on a submitted matter, the court shall respond within 30 days and give a written decision and discuss the issues. It doesn't always happen, but I'm always throwing that back up at the judge and say, this is what I'm waiting for. I don't think there's much we can do except either support what you're doing or not support what you're doing. I think your issue is legislative. And I guess AB 2353 is really an expression of what you're trying to accomplish. Mr. Schaefer, who is behind AB 2353? Did you say Assemblyman Ward?
Yes, so this bill was originally authored
Ward
by
is my
Assemblyman.
assemblyman down in San Diego.
He's a good one.
Yeah, so he and I are old-time buddies.
And then we actually do have the sponsors of the original bill, the California Housing Partnership, represented by Taisha as well.
Okay, that's good. And when you have a couple of problem counties, there's some way you can talk to them in legislation without naming them, because you can say any county that's in excess of 1 million people, or any county that's between 50 and 75,000 people, and you're really talking about the unnamed villain there, okay? I'm sure that's nothing new. So I want to thank you for what you've given us today, and I want to support what you're doing, knowing that anything that is in opposition to what you're doing, they can talk to the legislature about it. They don't have to talk to us. I think you're doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. Mr. Emron, did you have comments at this time? Okay, Mr. Vasquez.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and to all the presenters. And listening to what you're all talking about, one of the things that comes to mind is the state is currently going through this whole reorganization, right? And they're talking about creating, what do they call it? The California Housing and Homeless Agency and the Housing Finance Development Committee. And I think we've been part of the problem up here, between all the entities that I know, for those of you that are developing the housing piece, making you jump to so many different hoops as opposed to consolidate or at least streamlining the process. And I know there's one hoop that you got to go through the controller, another one through the treasurer. In your opinion, what are some of the things that we need to do to consolidate? Because I know time is money, and in many cases, you folks are taking out, at least I know when talking to my local housing corporation in Santa Monica, when they're sitting on these loans that they're taking out, and then they're waiting 2-3 years and having to pay interest on it. And that's why, some of these units are running anywhere from $700,000 to $900,000 a unit, which is ridiculous.
Absolutely. And we come to you today because we think it's a great time right now with the California Housing Agency getting up and running. It kicked off in July. We have this trend now in Sacramento of this consolidation of lining up our housing funding program so that we can eliminate all of these excess requirements in the system, and that we can be delivering units faster and for less money and serving more people ultimately. So I'll go back to recommendation 2, where we talked about the recognition of existing monitoring regimes. Is there something workable here? We can say that because the California Housing Agency is already monitoring this for income, is there something there? Can we rely on TCAC? Can we rely on HCD or other local regulatory bodies, other regulatory agreements here to say that you are income certified, this deed restriction is valid, and we can move your welfare tax exemption faster? You could get an award from the California Housing Agency now, from that HDFC that you mentioned, and maybe that could come with a fast track to getting your welfare tax exemption. Like we have momentum on this kind of idea right now, and we think that the BOE can be supportive of that exact effort there. I want to open it to the rest of the panel if we have other thoughts on that.
Yeah, I just want to really echo that because, for example, if you have an OCC, and I agree that BOE staff is amazing at turning those around. It's just a pleasure working with them. And so, yeah, if you have an OCC and there's a regulatory body already, that should enter you into a different track, right, where you're streamlined, right? And again, this is separate from the other legal document pathway. I get that that's complicated. I'm really talking about where there is a monitoring body already in place, and the organization has an OCC, right? That there has got to be a way of streamlining those properties. That would also cut down on the turnaround time, because part of what's happening is that there's all this back and forth that's going on because of that, right? So that solves both of those problems.
Okay.
And another question I had, I guess for the folks that are here from the Community Land Trust, and anybody else that's done anything on this front, how does that work on, so you you actually acquire, or you have monies, I guess, to acquire land, basically, or to take it over. Is it just for housing, or is it have other restrictions?
Yeah, so it really depends. I mean, so what we're talking about right here, right now, is the land and buildings that we've acquired for housing, specifically where we're actually, because this is really mostly where it's coming into play with the welfare tax exemption, where we've acquired an occupied property that's a rental, and we're working towards moving them into ownership, but there is a rental period of time. As far as our financing goes, we have a lot of different, it's a patchwork. We have to, I mean, if you saw our capital stacks, nothing looks like anything else. It's pretty wild. But one thing that we do try to get in there is public subsidy, right? And so that's where we have our regulatory agreements. It is true that sometimes we have turnarounds that are too fast to leverage in those subsidies. And we've turned around a property in 40 days that we had to purchase, and we were notified, and we had to move on it. So sometimes we're in that situation. But our funding comes from a lot of sources, right? We get like foundation funding, we get private donations, we get private loans, we get some private people invest in our work. It's really, each one is its own unique process. But because we are representing like community ownership, we have all different types. So we have mixed use, we have commercial, we have urban farms, we have new development, we have rental housing, we have, you name it, we got it. So I don't know if that answers your question or if you had other questions.
So in that process, well, I guess you said it depends on where the money's coming from, but at the end of the day, does the ownership stay within the community land trust?
Oh, yeah.
Or is it a partnership with the city or the county or wherever it's coming from?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just to give you examples, I am a resident and I own my house, and the community land trust owns the land under my house. And so the way that land, there's a 99-year heritable renewable lease that basically restricts the sale of the property. So I will make what I put in adjusted for CPI. But I can't sell it at market rate. You know, my son can inherit it, live there. He can't sell it at market rate. So basically, whenever it goes back on the market, it has to be the adjusted resale price. So the person who's buying it has to income qualify, just like I did, and that's capped at 80% AMI. And then those family that when they move in, they'll have the same restriction, and I'd only get what I put in. So it's a way of continuing. It was subsidized, my personal house was subsidized through federal funds, neighborhood stabilization project funds. And that money stays in the project, forever, because it doesn't have to be resubsidized, because it's only adjusting for inflation. It's never having to take more funding in. And so all of our projects kind of follow a similar model where the community land trust owns the land, and then the residents or the operators own the structures on the land.
Is that similar to what I guess it's still going on in like Catalina Island, right? Where they lease, they don't really own it. It's like a 99-year lease.
Yeah, it's kind of similar, right? Except that it's, just a different body, like certain municipalities could do that as well, right? And have that leased land. It is kind of a similar thing. We have a third resident representation on our board. So our governance is always taking a third residents, a third community members. So we're very much, that's part of how we maintain that community ownership structure, that we're accountable to our community and to our residents. But yeah, it's a way of kind of maintaining affordability while allowing people to also gain the prosperity of ownership and be able to advance themselves as owners and have that to move forward from as well.
Because it's like a share equity.
Yes, sure, yeah, that's exactly it, yeah.
In your opinion, this is Tanya, one of the members here, or the presenters here, what would you think is like the single one thing that we could do to, I guess that might be the most impactful on the welfare exemption to incentivize more of the affordable housing, on the affordable housing front? That would incentivize, I guess I should say.
I guess you asked for one, but I'll start us off with my one, and we'll see if there are other ones from the other panelists here. But as we said, guidance on 2353 is really taking care of an issue that would be solved by a faster welfare tax exemption process. And I think that one is really cornerstone to the other recommendations that we've brought to you today, that if we can have a faster process for that, a lot of the other periphery, the problems on the periphery will go away or just become less onerous. So if we can look to tightening those timelines down from that 1 to 3 years we talked about to a year, 6 months, 4 months, a very quick recognition of an existing monitoring regime from TCAC or HCD or some other body and really getting that time down, then we face a lot fewer issues in the other areas.
I'll just add to that. And my understanding of the statute with 2353 is that it only applies to properties that are using the low-income housing tax credit. So that will not apply to every type of affordable housing project. And it won't apply to CLT-owned properties or other preservation projects that are operated as rentals. So I think for preservation, the number one recommendation that I would personally say is either providing guidance on when audits of household incomes are actually necessary, or providing guidance or providing guidance that they should not be categorically required for every single household in order to receive the welfare tax exemption.
I want to echo everything that my colleagues have said, and then also one thing that is needed to make sure that the developer is armed and doesn't have to jump through these hurdles is that they are provided with the proper documentation to state that they are eligible for the welfare tax exemption. It's under review. So when it comes time for different remedies, such as AB 2353, that they can show documentation that their welfare tax exemption is being processed, and if they're qualified, they can give that to the assessors or other entities, and also their lenders to show that they qualify for these different remedies under these different statutes. So making sure they have proper documentation.
I want to chime in a little bit on like the administration of the welfare tax exemption and what the BOE already has in place as well, which you might not be familiar with. There is a BOE issued form. There's two of them, BOE 267 LB and also an LA form. And not all projects that, like, we're talking about tax credit projects or other locally funded or other government agency funded regulatory agreements where they're actually modeling their restrictions on a BOE issued form. It's each tenant completes the form and states their income and if they qualify or not. And I think what part of what we're asking for of like informal outreach to counties is this is a BOE estate form for the welfare tax exemption program. How is that not acceptable in administering the welfare tax exemption? We do understand that counties do have the authority to ask for more information, but a lot of the times when asking for all those tenant details and backup documentation, it lengthens the process that we're talking about. So, thank you.
And I would just want to echo Taisha's comments earlier, especially with AB 2353. There's a side where there's the issue of the guidance for our assessors and how to actually adjudicate the law itself. But I think also providing the guidance for our lenders and our the financing side, so that they have some level of guarantee that this body has deemed it approved, and that the hold on those actual property taxes is approved. So there's still some heartburn and anxiety from the lending world. So being able to kind of meet at both places, both on giving the guidance for the assessors, but also meeting it for the lenders as well, is kind of strikes that perfect balance that we can actually make this bill workable for everyone.
If I could respond to that for just a moment. We actually are working on an exemptions electronic filing portal. And at that point, you would get an automatic notice that your application is being reviewed and et cetera. It would all be done electronically. It would be able to probably be emailed to the tax collector. And so we are actually working forward with that. We've been trying to get this IT project off the ground for a few years. We're very close. We're awarding the contract to a vendor right now. It should be, hopefully their timeline is 18 to 24 months. I know that's not immediate. IT projects, big statewide IT projects take a long time, and this is just one piece of it. But we have actually been working to expedite this process and give better feedback. It's been something that's been echoed to all of us year after year, and we are trying and we're working on this. This is one of the ways we're working on it. And from our end of things, speaking to the delays and et cetera, we are just one partner in this. There are several people and entities that are involved in this exemption, but our longest delays are almost always applications that are missing information or applications that are incomplete. If you were to do one thing to speed up or to disqualify or be less delays, give less delays, it would be to provide better guidelines and better application information so that there were less applications that needed to be turned back and needed If you're turning an application back, we're waiting, everyone's waiting. It's slowing down us, it's slowing down you, it's causing financing problems. So if you guys could work on better instructions, clearer guidelines for the applications, I think that would benefit everyone here.
Okay, well, this has been a tremendous, yes, Jen,
I'm so
please.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Chair Lieber. I
No,
just
go
wanted
ahead.
to speak to that just a little bit, though, because it also kind of ties into the consistency, right? Because I know, you know, when I first started processing welfare tax applications, it was a new thing for me. And I followed the BOE instructions. That was where I went. That's what I followed. That's what I went to. That, you know, I did everything to the letter, exactly how it was instructed. And then I get back, oh, it's missing this, it's missing that, because the county has no transparency around what additional items are actually, quote, required. And so I think that's the other piece of it, right? You know, if you say, okay, that it's an incomplete application, but you haven't said, we're gonna need X, Y, and Z from you, and I followed the instructions exactly to the letter that the BOE provides, well, I'm sorry, how's that on me? You know, and so I think that there does need to be A, transparency, and B, like some consistency, and I think some limits in terms of how much can you just turn around and say, oh, by the way, we didn't tell you we needed this, but we're gonna need it from you. That's not okay. So, and that's also part of it, so, sorry, just.
Okay, excellent. And I think I have a light from Ms. Towers.
Yvette Stowers again. With your permission, ma'am, after I meet with the assessors in 2 weeks, I would like to convene a smaller working group, and hopefully the controller's office can work with me on this and with some of the parties here to come up with a solution. With respect to, I think the first problem is AB 2353. So let's try to solve that problem first, whether we come up with an LTA, whether we come up with a fact sheet, whether we come up with something that it could be distributed to all parties involved.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair.
To your statement, I'm just trying to get clarification in terms of, are the BOE's requirements different than the county assessors
Yes.
for an exemption?
Yes, absolutely. There's forms that I've had to, that I, like, for example, the LA that you were talking about for a long time, that wasn't on my county assessor's website.
Yes.
And I was having people fill that out because it's a BOE requirement. And I said, you know what, even if they are saying they don't have it, even if I can't get it on their website, I'm doing this because it's a requirement. And so I had to fill in the county assessor's information on the BOE form and just keep that for our own. I mean, there is not consistency.
But if we could provide clarity, if we could give you a sheet or email you something that would indicate this is what the BOE is going to need, and then this is what the county assessor is going to need.
Right, exactly. And if the county assessors could also sort of, if there could be some guidance to the assessors that said, they have to follow the BOE guidelines. Like if it's so much different than what the guidelines are saying, and they haven't posted those on there, it is really very difficult to comply, especially
Okay.
with a first filing.
Okay, does that vary from county to county? in
Yes,
terms of the
extremely.
requirements on it?
That's
Yeah.
part of the problem. Exactly, exactly. That's, yeah. Yes.
Okay. Well, let's,
It's even project to project. That's what we were saying earlier. It's not even just county to county, it's project to project, and there's different requirements for different welfare filings. And I mean, we could try to give a standard list, counties could try to give a list of what may be anticipated or may be asked of them, but each project can even be different from county lines, from size, from occupancy, like it varies so often that is part of the inconsistencies you guys are seeing too. It's the same for us. So we do understand the frustration there.
Well, I'm glad that Chair Lieber is working on this.
yes, I think this is going to be my summer and my fall. And before we go to Mr. Young, I just wanted to say that I think that it's perhaps the legislature that can drive the standardization as well, so that there isn't, you know, it kind of reminds me of those kudzu vines in the South where they just grow and they eat whole buildings. And I think unless there's an absolute declarative statement that this is what will be needed, and it's limited to that, but allowing each county, and then as Mr. Paul was saying, the possible variation within a county based on size and et cetera. It's just kind of an untenable situation. But we're going to rely on Mr. Young to make a comment to us now.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Lieber, for the opportunity. Once again, David Young, Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department. So just to give you just a tiny little background on this program, it is a bifurcated administration thereof. We do a certain part, the assessors do a certain part. Our part, when the entity applies to the BOE to get an OCC, we actually have a checklist for them. It's a part of the full filing package. We have our form. We have a checklist of typically what type of documentation you would need in order to have a complete filing. So we have a checklist. It's only a checklist. It's guidance to give you a heads up as to what is needed. It is not meant to limit what we can ask for, but it is a guideline. So when you step into it, you come prepared. I hear the expressed frustration and challenges of the stakeholders in this. I mean, we're willing to work with the assessors in developing guidance and a checklist, but once again, it will be a checklist. It is not something as a ceiling as to what you can ask for and not anything more than that. The other thing that I wanted to weigh in on is there was a discussion brought up about checking in either requirements or income verification and whatnot because of the multiple agencies that are involved in regulating, financing this type of housing. We've looked into that in the past. I've looked into it personally, and our requirements and their requirements, the Venn diagrams didn't totally sit on top of each other. So while there are commonalities, they are not identical. It's been a couple of years since we've looked at them. I'd be more than happy to revisit that to see where the commonalities lie and where the differences lie. I am very committed to streamlining the exemption process for low-income housing. We've done 3 rounds internally on our process. We've driven our turnaround time from multiple months, 9 months, down to now when an application is complete, it's processed and basically sent out within 1 month. So I know there's more work to be done. Looking forward to doing it and engaging.
Okay, thank you so much. Vice Chair, did you have a question for Mr. Young?
Just one thing I want to weigh in on is that it is it's the common complaint that I get as a member of the BOE, are these welfare tax exemptions. And I know there's a lot of different types of those, but there's usually a hang-up in the county or there's a hang-up at the BOE.
Yeah.
And so I know you're working on it, but to the degree that we can streamline it would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, a huge thanks to all of the practitioners who have taken the time to meet with us multiple times and come all the way up here today, and to our California Assessors Association President, Paul. Thank you, and thank you to Santa Clara County and Marin County. We know that you are always there for us, and the work is going to go on, and we're going to break off as many easy pieces as we can in the immediate time frame. I can commit to bringing back at least one piece at our next meeting, and we'll kind of go from there until we get this done. So thank you so much, and we do have public comment that we're going to take, and before we do that, I just wanted to give a huge thanks to my staff, Doug Winslow and John Thiela and Kimberly Jacobs, who are here today, for all the time and attention that you've put into this. I know you have heart and soul in this particular game. And then also to our staff, Jordan Eldridge and Michelle Krause, who are not up here today, but are also similarly committed. And so our card from someone who would like to make public comments is from Angelica Campos, who is from Mutual Housing, California. Thank you for coming up.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Lieber and members of the board. My name is Angelica, and I work at Mutual Housing California, an affordable housing nonprofit developer working to finance, build, and preserve housing for low-income Californians. I strongly support the recommendations presented today regarding the administration of the welfare tax exemption. I strongly support the focus on consistent implementation of AB 2353, accelerating welfare tax exemption approval and refund timelines, establishing clear statewide standards for required documentation in county administration, and from our experience developing and managing over 23 affordable housing communities, one of the most significant challenges is the lack of consistency between counties, and we operate in various counties around California and are continuing to expand. Different counties often request different documentation, apply varying standards, or interpret board guidance differently. This creates uncertainty, increases administrative burden, and requires us affordable housing providers to spend valuable time, staff time navigating varying local processes rather than focusing on property operations and resident services. Clear statewide guidance and standardized documentation requirements would make the process more predictable and efficient for everyone involved, including affordable housing providers, county assessors, lenders, and other stakeholders. The goal is not to diminish oversight, but to ensure that oversight is applied consistently across jurisdictions. Ultimately, I believe the message is simple. Affordable housing providers are not asking for less accountability. We're asking for a process that is more consistent, predictable, and efficient for both affordable housing providers and county assessors. These improvements would help ensure that limited affordable housing resources are directed toward maintaining, preserving, and expanding housing opportunities for California residents in need, rather than navigating unnecessary administrative hurdles. Thank you for your time and consideration of these recommendations.
Thank you very much. And we do not have other written.
Yes, we have.
Oh, we do.
During the actual informational hearing, we received a written comment on
Please.
our line. So I'd be happy to read it into the record.
Please.
It was received from Southern California Association of Nonprofit Housing. The Southern California Association of Nonprofit Housing thanks the board for the opportunity to comment on agenda item number 14 for the meeting on July 22nd regarding recommendations on implementation of AB 2353. We are a membership advocacy organization representing nonprofit affordable housing developers and the continuum of stakeholders necessary to advance affordable housing. We are active in 5 counties. Through our members, contribute housing in many more. Our members echo the challenges that have been named today: non-existent, unclear, or shifting processes, and years-long delays in processing waivers. Nonprofit developers deeply emphasize with the difficulty of tackling highly technical, complex tasks with limited resources and capacity. We encourage the Board of Equalization to actualize the recommendations presented today. Furthermore, we ask the assessors and tax collectors to leverage the relevant committees within the California Association of Treasurers and Tax Collectors to coordinate, collaborate, and implement clear processes and guidance. That's the end.
Okay, thank you very much. And we're going to go out to our AT&T moderator. And moderator, if you would please let us know if there's anyone on the line who would like to make a comment on item 14.
Certainly. If you'd like to make a comment, please press 1 followed by 0. 1 followed by 0. And we presently have no comments. Please continue.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to bring it back, and I wish that we had time for some really meaty closing comments, but we're just about 1 hour and 1 minute past our break time for our transcription staff. So again, a huge thanks to everyone who came up today. We promise you that your time will have been worth it. And thank you for the work that you do. Thanks so much. And we'll go on a 10-minute break now at 3:31. Okay, we are back in session at 3:42, and we have already dispensed with item 15. So we're on item 16 now, Property Tax Deputy Director's Report. Mr. Young, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Lieber, honorable members of the board. Thank you. For the record, David Young, Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department. For you today, I have 4 reports. The first 2 will be by Ms. Melissa Osborne. She will give you a report on our letters to assessors and our appraisal training and certification since we last met. That will be followed by a report by Ms. Holly Cooper. She will give you the quarterly update as to our assessment practices survey program. And lastly, Mr. Jack McCool will come up and update you on what's going on in the State Assessed Properties Division now that we've finished our valuation season. So if you guys are ready, I will have Ms. Osborne come up with the first 2, of course.
Fantastic, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Lieber and honorable members of the board. I'm Melissa Osborne. I'm a supervising appraiser in the county.
Oops, I think we just had some seal slippage.
Okay.
But I see someone coming forward to...
Today, I'll provide a brief report on letters to assessors. Attached to this month's agenda is a memo on letters to assessors, which provides a list of the LTAs issued since the last report at the last board meeting, and a link to the BOE's website where a list of all LTAs issued to date can be found. As of the date of the attached memo, the agency has issued a total of 24 LTAs for calendar year 2026, and 1 since the report at the last board meeting. The LTA is summarized as follows. An LTA from the Assessment Practices Surveys Division to issue the Plumas County Assessment Practices Survey. This concludes my report on letters to assessors. I'm available if you have any questions.
Okay, super. Does anyone have questions for Ms. Osborne on the issue of the letter to assessors? Mr. Schaefer.
You sent me a copy of every letter because I requested it. Does the board, any of the other board members get them, or we just see them in our monthly report?
If you can sign up.
Good afternoon. Yes, all board members receive a preview of the letters to assessors before we issue them. And then when we issue them, they see the final copy. We send it to all board members and their deputies to their BOE email address.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Well, seeing no further questions, we'll have you go on to the appraisal training and certification item.
For the 2026-27 fiscal year, BOE staff scheduled 35 classes and 2 webinars. Additionally, there were 4 classes scheduled with instructors in the county assessor's offices for their staff. Of the courses taught by the BOE, 2 have been completed since the beginning of the fiscal year. We also continue to offer our existing online basic training courses through American River College and California State University, Sacramento, as well as additional online courses and self-study training sessions available on the BOE's website. This concludes my report on training and certification, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Questions on training and certification, Mr. Vasquez?
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Osborne. As I'm looking at this, I know this is just the first month of the new fiscal year, but I was just wondering how we're doing in terms of recruiting more of the staff, I guess, support for these classes, especially from the assessors.
From county assessor staff?
Yes.
I don't know if there's been any changes to that.
Oh, here we go.
Thank you, Board Member Vasquez, for that question. The light keeps going off. I hear my voice going, so
You're good,
I think I'm
Good.
We are actually fairly stable right now with the amount of instructors that we have. We always welcome more, and counties that are interested in teaching for us, I highly encourage them to contact us. We'd be more than happy to set them up. We have pushed out a lot of training classes now. If you recall, when you first 7.5 years ago, 8 years ago, we were offering about a dozen classes a year. We're up to about 35. And so we're finding that some of our classes now, they're not as full to the capacity as they once were. We're meeting a lot of training challenges and the hours and whatnot. I think as the assessors have trained some of their newer staff, the courses that they're going to want it's going to change a little because it evolves over time. We have introductory courses when they first come in. As they move up in their careers and whatnot, they are actually looking for more of the advanced courses. So we're always checking every single year as to what classes they need, and we're always recruiting for more assessors, and we're adapting the courses to what the actual need is by the county assessors.
No, I think you're right. That's, I remember, right, like 7 years ago, we were talking about this, and the issue, the classes were full and packed. And I guess now as you're offering more and more, the numbers are shrinking, but it seems like we're still meeting the demand.
We're still meeting the demand. You are correct. There was a time where we only offered about a dozen courses. We're just about triple that right now on a yearly basis. And last year we actually did 40. And so we've bulked up our team. We've recruited folks from counties, but hey, we're always looking for more opportunity to offer more and more relevant courses.
Thanks.
Of course.
Okay. No further questions. We'll welcome up Ms. Holly Cooper for the Assessment Practices Surveys Quarterly Report.
Hopefully this is working.
Yep.
Good afternoon, Chair Lieber and honorable members of the board. I'm Holly Cooper, Chief of the Assessment Practices Survey Division. Today I will be presenting a brief background on the programs administered by the Assessment Practices Survey Division and an overview of the final survey reports published during the second quarter of 2026. In terms of current auditing practices, what we refer to at BOE as an assessment practices survey is actually an audit of the county assessors to determine whether property value assessments follow property tax law. The auditors and appraisers in the Assessment Practices Survey Division perform qualitative compliance audits of the assessor's procedures and practices and perform quantitative audits through the use of defensible statistical sampling of representative assessments from property tax rolls. During the second quarter of 2026, the division issued 2 audit reports via letters to assessors in Nevada and Plumas counties. In Nevada County, we conducted a statistical sampling for roll year 24-25. They had an average assessment ratio of 99.83%, and the sum of absolute differences measuring disparity among assessments was 0.97%, both well within tolerance. In Plumas County, we conducted a compliance audit, which includes a review of the assessor's administrative, real property, and business property procedures and practices for roll year 2024-25. We made a total of 10 recommendations, 3 in the area of administration, 3 in the assessment of real property, and 4 in the assessment of personal property and fixtures. The recommendations contained in the report are as follows. Report statistics as requested by the BOE pursuant to Section 407. Notify disaster relief applicants of a proposed reassessment in accordance with Section 170. Grant the welfare exemption in accordance with Section 214, Subdivision A. Reappraise all properties exceeding the 1 million exclusion provided in Section 63.1. Submit quarterly reports to BOE pursuant to Section 69.5 Subdivision B, Paragraph 7, and 69.6 Subdivision B, Paragraph 6. Enroll all accessible new construction. Improve the audit program by performing the minimum number of audits of professions, trades, and businesses pursuant to Section 469, and developing and maintaining an effective audit tracking schedule. Obtain a waiver of statute of limitations pursuant to Section 532.1 when an audit will not be completed timely. Support any divergence from the use of the price indexes and percent good published in Assessor Handbook 581 with market evidence. Use the BOE recommended vessel valuation factors as intended. In summary, for both audit reports, the BOE found no significant assessment problems as defined in Rule 371. Therefore, the assessors in Nevada and Plumas County are all eligible to receive reimbursement of costs associated with administering their supplemental assessments. This concludes my quarterly report, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Okay, are there any questions? Right now, it looks like you gave us all the info that we needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll go on now to our next sub-item, the state assessed property report, covered by Mr. McCool.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Lieber and honorable members of the board. My name is Jack McCool, Chief of the State Assessed Properties Division. Today I will provide information on the ongoing work in our division. With the adoption earlier today of both the private railroad car and state assessed property rolls, SAPD will now be preparing next steps. For the private railroad car assessees, notices will be sent to each assessee notifying them of their assessed value amount and information for how they may dispute the assessed value. In contrast to the state assessed roll, BOE is responsible for all functions of the private railroad car tax. Our staff will now begin preparing tax bills that will be sent to PRC taxpayers. Once the tax bills are sent in October, we will be responsible for collecting the tax, which is then deposited into the state's general fund. Our partners in CDTFA's accounting unit process the tax bill payments for us, but BOE is responsible for issuing the tax bills as well as any late notices or delinquent account notices. SAPD will also transmit the final state assessed property roll to each county, as mentioned earlier today. The roll is transmitted in both hard copy and electronic format to each county. The counties will apply the applicable tax rates to our assessed values, and the counties will also issue the tax bills and collect the property tax, which stays at the local level. SAPD staff will also send each assessee notice of their assessment. Each notice provides information on deadlines to file an appeal and includes the board proceeding division's guidelines on how to file a tax appeal. Finally, SAPD auditors have already begun work on this year's audit program. Routine public utility property tax audits are performed by the State Assessed Properties Division to determine the accuracy, completeness, and reliability of the financial data furnished by the assessees and used by the board in the valuation process. Audit findings that result in a recommended change in an assessee's value will be brought before the board for your consideration in future months. And that concludes my report for this month, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no comments or questions, thank you so much. It's been a full day for you and your team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Young, did you want to have some closing comments for us?
Yeah, actually I do. In general, I always recognize the tremendous work my team does every single month. But today I want to highlight just a little bit SAPD, and in particular Jack McCool. He doesn't know this, but I have to commend him for the amount of work that he's done recently. He was able to complete our central assessment duty through SAPD. We got the board roll done, we got PRC done, all while doing a reorganization of that division. So we're reorganizing part of it just to be able to handle our new workload a little better. We picked up about 200 or so new assessees under VOIP, and he provided the majority of the technical requirements for our technology project. So all that in conjunction, getting the board roll out and everything, it was a lot of heavy lifting. So while everybody pulled together, he played the lion's share in getting all that work done this month. So I wanted just to say thank you. With that, I turn it back to you. Thank you.
It's very well placed, thanks. And Mr. McCool, you've truly had so much throughput in these last months, especially with the voice over internet protocol. That was something that I think wasn't expected a couple of years ago, and it opens up a whole new area of needing to assess within the BOE. And your staff has really performed spectacularly well, and you have very ably led them to do so. So I'd like to invite us all to give Mr. McCool a round of applause. Thank you so much, and thank you, Mr. Young, for highlighting those achievements. So we'll go on now to item 17, the special taxes quarterly report, and we have Ms. Williams approaching.
Good afternoon, Chair Lieber and members of the board. My name is Laurel Williams. I'm the BOE's technical advisor for the executive office, particularly for the special tax programs, which include the alcoholic beverage tax and tax and insurers program. For my regular report today, I'm going to start with the tax on insurers program. The number of accounts for this program has increased slightly since my last quarterly report. We are up to 2,868 accounts, so approximately 20 more accounts. According to the June 2026 Department of Finance Bulletin, the revenues for this program for fiscal year 25-26 are at $4.89 billion, which is almost exactly at their projected amount, only $1 million shy of the forecast. And again, the program remains highly compliant. The second program is our alcoholic beverage tax program. There are 10,555 accounts for this program, which is slightly down from my last report. According to the June 2026 Department of Finance Bulletin, the revenues for this program in fiscal year 25-26 are at just over $383 million, which is approximately 0.9% or $3 million below the forecasted amount. So both of the programs are very close to the projected amounts by DOF. The opt-in, opt-out rate for the wine grower returns has increased since my last report at approximately 68% of wine growers electing to have the returns not publicly disclosed. The beer industry has remained the same since my last report at approximately 57% of beer manufacturers opting out of public disclosure. This program remains highly compliant as well. I am continuing to work with colleagues in other states regarding nationwide trends and alcoholic tax policy matters. So unless there are any questions, that concludes my report for this quarter.
Okay, Vice Chair.
Yeah, but my first of 9 questions, if I could. No, I'm just kidding. I don't have any questions. Thank you.
That was no fair. Oh, well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For your report. Okay, well, we've got Mr. Angelo coming. Mr. Angelo, we want you to kind of tie all the loose ends from the day together and sum it up for us here with the Legislative Research and Statistic Division Chief's report.
Is it working? Oh, what a day, huh? For the record, Chair Lieber and honorable members, Ted Angelo, the Legislative Director and Chief of the Legislative Research and Statistics Division. Oh, there's the light. Okay, all right, I'll probably break it. I just want to say to Mr. McCool, great work, and with a name like that, we expect that of you. And I'd also like to say, I will keep this brief. I know it's been a long day, but I'm going to give you a little bit of one of the things I will say is the good news, a lot of the board-supported measures are still alive. The bad news is they go to appropriations for the most part when they come back on August 3rd. So the legislature, as you know how difficult that can be at times with our fiscal issues in the state, but the legislature is on their summer recess and they will be back on August 3rd for the record. The good news is our board sponsored and supported bill to extend the pipeline right-of-way in SB 1437 was signed by the governor on July 6th. So one down in the success column. And then I'm just going to give you a brief update on some of those bills that are headed towards appropriations, so I don't go into too much detail. There's one bill that we haven't discussed, and I'm just going to briefly touch on it. In terms of two-year bills, SB 288, which is the probate bill that we've discussed in great detail, that's still that's going to be in Assembly Appropriations when they come back, once they start hearing. They'll have their hearings and then suspense file before they go to floor session at the probably middle of August. They should do suspense as we wind down the session. In terms of bills that we haven't discussed a little bit, SB 672 Caloza extends the welfare exemption for community land trusts, some of what we were talking about in the informational hearing. That's going to Senate Appropriations and will go to suspense for anything that's above a certain threshold, which most of these bills will. AB 1294 Haney. This one's a little interesting because it's scheduled to be heard in Senate Rev and Tax when they return, even though it's past the policy committee deadline. But this is the one that does the moderate income housing welfare exemption, but only in San Francisco, Alameda, and Sacramento counties. So I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work out, if they have a rule waiver or if it's a tax levy and they're able to hear it past the deadline, but just an FYI on that one. The bill that would have done it statewide failed earlier this year. AB 1668 Pellerin is the welfare exemption extension for another 5 years for the open space land. That's the one that the Native reacquisition used. So that code section would be extended another 5 years. That's going to Senate Appropriations. AB 2022 Gonzalez is the board, and that was supported by the board, by the way, 1668 Pellerin. Also supported by the board, AB 2022 Gonzalez is the enhanced disabled veterans measure, a larger exemption for those with certain thresholds. That's going to a Senate Appropriations on August 3rd. AB 2089 Ward, supported by the board, is the e-signature enhancement. Probably dovetails a little bit with what we were talking about on ways to verify where it's not clear, giving them full capabilities where it wasn't under the Gibson bill from a couple of years ago. AB 2172 is the, AB 2167 Macedo is the bill that extends what 1485 was doing, signed at the very beginning of the year for the tribal reacquisition. It authorizes nonprofits acting on behalf of them and extends it to them a little further than what was authorized in 1485. That bill is moving forward and will go to appropriations on the Senate side. AB 2172 is the Assessment Appeals Board proposal for the single commissioner. We've handled that one in great detail, so I won't go into it. There are some costs to the board for legal, because only 3 and 5 member boards were authorized. There will be a cost to legal for rulemaking. That's been shared with the fiscal committees. I don't think it's going to endanger the bill. It's received no negative votes moving forward, but I just wanted to give you a heads up on that because it will require a little bit of rulemaking. SB 420 is the board-supported clarification that detention facilities won't have the welfare exemption. That's going to Assembly Appropriations. Special Needs Trust Bill, SB 974 by Sayardo is moving forward. Clarification bill only, supported by the board. SB 888, Disabled Vets Household Income is moving forward. And there's just a couple more. One I just wanted to talk about in a little bit of detail because we haven't discussed it today, and it's of concern to the assessors. SB 911 by Senator Becker. It requires a property buyer in designated areas to disclose whether they have an obligation to show proof of compliance with certain defensible space requirements in high fire risk areas. It requires county assessors to make available to CAL FIRE and local entities, local fire agencies, the name of the transferee and the property address of the transferees in these areas in order to comply. So they're trying to do the right thing, but what they're using is this preliminary change of ownership report that we, it's under our jurisdiction. It has certain information on it, but it's not required to be recorded. So they're trying to, it has some nuance in it, and it's why the assessors have some concerns. They'd like to see a different form used for this purpose. I think the realtors have issues with doing it that way. So it's a work in progress, even though we're getting very late in the session. And I just wanted you to become aware of it because it's something that it's trying to do a worthy notification, but it also could have significant compliance costs and concerns and privacy concerns that are used for other entities only in very certain circumstances, like child support services, things like that. So that's about it for my report. There is a bill, SB 1329, with the active solar valuation. I'm not going to go into great detail on that, but I'm working with our property tax department on how that is done. It's trying to remove credits. So when active solar becomes taxable beginning next year, there's a process in place that's already been in place for many years. They're trying to put something in place that would give a little bit of a credit off of what would otherwise be a normal depreciation. I'm not going to go into all the accounting mechanisms on how it's done, but they're trying to remove tax credits and other credits that were done under existing law before it's assessed moving forward. There's some problems with that. It would obviously be a revenue loss to the counties. We've heard about those a little bit, but I didn't go into detail on it before, so I wanted to bring it up today. We're looking at that. It's indeterminable, but it would be a revenue loss to the counties if it moved forward. I'll leave it for questions there. That's the end of my report.
Okay, any questions? Mr. Vasquez?
Real quick, and actually the two legislators up on the, or former legislators who are on the board probably know a little more about this than I do. And I know you mentioned it, I think at the last report about how some of these bills are gutted and amended. Mm-hmm. And I understand that's what happened to the Padilla bill. But at the end of the day, I think it went through. I'm not sure what the final outcome was of it in terms of the language.
Okay, I'm not familiar with the exact Padilla bill you're
What was it?
420.
Oh, yes.
SB 420.
Okay. So your question is, it's still going through, but they're still moving, they're still looking at the language.
So we don't know at this point what it is, right?
Yeah, it's headed to,
But somehow it got out of committee, right?
Yes, it made it out of committee with a language change. I don't have it in front of me right now, so I just know that the bill's still alive and it's still moving to make that clarification. How it's the exact language that's in it, I don't have in front of me today.
And we won't know that until when?
Sorry, it's a late day.
Yeah.
So you're talking about SB 420.
Yes,
That was a gut amended bill to add in language that the welfare exemption does not apply to
The
detention
detention.
centers.
yeah.
So we do know the language, and that the board took a position on that bill in June.
So it did include that even in the gut amendment?
Yeah, that was the gut amendment added that in.
Added it, okay.
Yes.
There were some options for language, and they decided on one of the two options, and it moved forward. So I don't believe it's going to be changing. So I'm sorry if that was unclear.
Thanks.
Mr. Imran.
Appreciate it, appreciate it, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Angelo, for your report. Congratulations on SB 1437, the board-sponsored legislation being signed by the governor. I'm sure that's a good feeling to get that signature. I wanted to highlight two bills. I don't have a question per se, but I did want to highlight two bills. As the board, we've been hearing quite a few over the past couple of years. One's good news, one's bad news. Going to the good news, one's AB 1033. It's the first ever standalone ADU sold in San Jose for $530,000. And it opens a new avenue of home ownership where in places like San Jose, where the median home value is over $1 million to $2 million. So to sell these standalone ADUs, and it comes with a lot of perks as well, parking, detached utilities, and no HOA dues. And I think it's pretty cutting edge to kind of see that come to life. And then on the bad news side, this board took positions on SB 4 by Senator Wiener. Yes, in my God's backyard is faith-based organizations can build on their property exempt land. However, I did see a report from Turner that said, although there's over 171,000 acres available to build on exempt land, 5 times the size of Oakland, since this bill's inception 3 years ago, where the board has supported, only 94 units have been permitted statewide, and none have been completed according to the California Department of Housing and Community Development. There's been run-ins. The churches are clearly not developers. There's organizations competing for small pots of money, and I think it warrants that the board look into this a little bit to see if there's anything that we can do to kind of push this forward as well, because I'm sure that wasn't the intention to have zero projects finished 3 years later. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, well, if we could have a quick summary from you, and then Mr. Schaefer has something to say, and he has to leave in 1 minute. Please.
I don't have anything to share I'll just say duly noted to Mr. Imran's comments, and we'll be taking a look at those. But they aren't on our, weren't on the agenda today.
Okay, great. And I think they're of general interest. It would be ironic if they were up-assessed when it went from being a religious institution that is exempt to, say, an affordable housing developer. So we'll get more into that. And thank you very much, Mr. Angelo, for closing us out.
Thank you.
And we are going to take public comment on the executive director's reports, but without objection, I'd like to go to Mr. Schaefer before he has to leave because he has an important adjourn that he'd like to have voiced.
I wanted to adjourn memory of a very interesting person in my district, T. Denny Sanford. He passed away this last week at age 90, and he was a very controversial person. He was the richest man in South Dakota. He had $2.1 billion last time we looked. He's one of 2 billionaires that I've come to know, Mr. Sanford, and the other one, of course, is Palmer Luckey, who calls up into our meeting. You remember that? Mr. T. Denny Sanford gave $30 million to rebuild the Children's Zoo in San Diego, but he gave $500 million over years to develop National University. He's given $500 million in Sioux City, South Dakota, to build a huge complex of medical facilities. He's one of several people in San Diego that have given $100 million at a crack to build medical facilities in San Diego. His ambition was to die broke. He failed because he still left enough money to make his 3 kids happy. But I used to see him at the Manhattan restaurant once or twice a month in La Jolla, and he would sit at the piano bar and fist bump, and if he'd have a dish of sushi, he'd give that to some of the people at his table. He was a very outgoing, nice guy, and people really didn't think somebody that nice could be a billionaire. But we lost him at age 90, and I just wanted to mention T. Denny Sanford. You'll find that as an interesting name, Sanford, if you Google him. And I'm very proud of him in our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. That is a fascinating adjourn, and I think that we would all want to join in that with you. So thank you very much. And members, we're now going to go to public comment for all of the executive directors' reports. And we do not have written comments, nor do we have speaker cards. And so we'll go to our AT&T moderator. And moderator, if you could please let us know if there's anyone holding who would like to comment on items 9 through 13 and 15 through 18.
Certainly, if you'd like to make a comment, please press 1 followed by 0. 1 followed by 0. And there are no comments. Please continue.
Okay, thank you, moderator. Well, members, that just about does it here. The last item for today is closing remarks and adjournment. And does anyone have any summary closing remarks? I'll give the privilege to the vice chair first if he would like to reflect on anything. Mr. Vasquez?
Yes, I just wanted to thank Chair for putting that hearing together. I thought it was really productive. Hopefully, we'll have some good follow-up on that. But I wanted to adjourn this meeting under 2 men who we lost. First, I want to adjourn this meeting under the tragic death of a young man, Lorenzo Salgado Arugo, who was shot by ICE officer while driving to work, working with his working crew, home construction site in Houston, Texas on July 7, 2026. He died from his injuries at Ben Tubb Hospital in Houston at the age of 52. Salgado was a home builder from Mexico who had lived in the United States for 35 years. He ran his own construction business, building homes in the Houston suburbs, and was known not only for his work ethic and dedication to his family, but also for his fairness and willingness to help anyone who needed it. Lorenzo Salgado Arugo is survived by his wife and 3 of his sons. And then while we were at this conference in LA, just last week, we also had another incident with ICE where they shot Sebastian Duran Guerrero, who was shot and killed by ICE officer while he was driving his car with his 3-year-old daughter in the car with him. In Biddeford, Maine, on July 13, 2026, he was 25 years old. Duran Guerrero was a food delivery driver who had also worked at the veterinarian clinic. He came to the United States from Colombia seeking a better life for his family. He was described by neighbors as a good father and husband who was very dedicated to his work and his family. Joan Sebastian Duran Guerrero is survived by his partner and daughter. And it's a shame, we keep hearing on the federal level that this is all about taking care of or making sure that they're getting rid of supposedly criminals and drug dealers. And here we have 2 incidents that just happened recently of 2 hardworking individuals, one that had been here for 35 years. Poor guy lost his life. But anyways, I just wanted to bring that to your attention. We could adjourn his honor. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vasquez, and my heart goes out to the many families. Our country is expected to do better, and we will in time, but we need to save a special place in our heart for them and also consider giving to the GoFundMes for the families who did not expect to lose a breadwinner and have extreme expenses related to it, too, for the children. So I want to thank everyone for hanging in there with us. It's been a very full day, and I think a very productive day, and thank staff for hanging in there with us. It's been a journey just in one day. We've come a long ways. And so we will stand adjourned, and our next meeting is on the date, which I've lost track of here, will be on August 26, 2026, right here at the Maley State Office Building. So again, thank you, members, and we stand adjourned at 4:23 p.m.